So you're here for a Civil Discourse about substance use, addiction, prevention, and treatment. I'm cont'd, so we're here without walls. This will be a little bit of a different of a presentation than you probably maybe used to. And we'll just kind of see how that all goes. I learned technology just before we started, so I'm hoping this works. Nope, it did not work. So December lunch and learn, right? Please join me in thanking the Wood County presenting partners who made this possible: Employee Wellness, UW Extension, Healthy People Wood County, Health Department, and Wisconsin Rapids Community. I'd like to start out right away by giving you the reference list instead of waiting to the end, because the comment I make on this is throughout the PowerPoint slide. I finished it about an hour ago. It's still unfolding, as I mentioned in my the flyer for this. Is kind of an organic process. So these are the primary resources and references that I've used. You'll notice that Maya Shalovitz, The Unbroken Brain, is one that I pull from primarily. So what I'm going to do is, through this process too, is I want to create kind of a mindfulness atmosphere and work on the things that we're going to somewhat discuss through this experientially during this process. So what I would like you to do as I hand this around, it just has the title and it has the references on the back here, okay? So what I would like you to do, and Jack, can I use you as an example? You won't be on camera, I just use your name though. Yeah. Is I'm going to hand this to Jack, okay? It's going to go to each person, right? As it comes to you, I want you to catch the impulse of grabbing it and then grab it in a different way. Typically if I hand it, he already did, he saw his hand come up. So catch that impulse either before the hand moves or as your hand moves, and then just grab it differently. With a different hand, move your hand differently to pick it, whatever that is, okay? Whatever that means. You can do that. Okay, so I'll allow you to spread that out, and I encourage you to take one and then pass it on and kind of have a little mindful moment, catch yourself, and do it differently. Somebody gets up and does a little dance before they grab it. Wonderful. Whatever works. The other thing about the references throughout, as I'm putting the information, you'll see that a lot of them that I do have the quotes on there, trying to do it as correctly as possible, where I've drew the sources. But a lot of it, again, comes from Maya's book, where I probably didn't quote. So throughout this, and I'm not here to plagiarize at all, if there is anything that is not quoted, it's probably from one of these sources, primarily hers. The element that will show up most often through this that is primarily mine will be acronyms. So when I come across acronyms, that's something that I created. So other than that, it's all information that I resourced. I love this quote by Albert Einstein: "We can't solve problems by using the same kind of thinking we used when we created them." My understanding of the issues of substance use and misuse and addiction is part of the problem is how, based on the thinking that first created it, and you'll see as we move along in some of the videos. And I believe that there needs to be a little bit of a paradigm shift, a different way of looking at the problem at the individuals who have these issues and challenges in their lives. So this is a lunch and learn. Here's my first acronym. Again, it's mine. You can come up with a totally different one. I see learn as listening with energized attention, receptivity, and need. Fairly explained. Acronym, again, I'll use acronym to show you how acronyms can be used. A creative route and opportunity for naming your message. So, what brings you here today, or what brought you here today? And I'm not talking about the vehicle, the mode of transportation. For myself, what brought me here is just a quick little background, because I'm being mindful of our time. We have a lot of information, plus I believe there's a collective wisdom around the table that we can draw from and have discussions. Is that, quickly professionally, I have an undergrad in theater. It does connect and correlate to working in mental health. I have a master's in clinical mental health counseling from UW-Stout. Personally, I have a family history of substance use and misuse and possible addiction. And then for myself, when it comes to working with the different populations, where I am most motivated is through children and adolescents and working towards prevention and treatment, because I have a 12, almost 13-year-old son. I was fortunate enough to be a stay-at-home dad when he was born. I was there for the first critical developmental stage, which was 5 years. When he went to kindergarten, I went back to school for my master's. And so now, as he's getting into this adolescent stage of development, I'm very aware of the concerns and challenges here in our community and across the nation. And so that's what motivates me to see what I can do to help myself, my son, his classmates, and our community. That's what all you are here for. So first bit of asking, I'm going to take this off here because that's not very stable. If you're open and willing to, not to give a history as to, like I did, but all of you were motivated to come here for some reason. Maybe it was the wellness points, which is fine. Is there something in particular you are looking for that brought you here today? Nothing, then I'll just continue on. Sir.
So I'm a latecomer in the sense that I actually went to school. I graduated in January with my bachelor's in behavioral science.
Okay.
So I got things screwed up, is what people tell me. But so actually, I'm going for a counselor through the University of Wisconsin, the credentialing program. And so I just came here to see who's around in the area and where I could maybe fit in, or that kind of thing. So.
Okay. Thank you for sharing. Anyone else?
I heard you were going to do something on the unbroken brain, and I heard her on NPR, and I was real interested to read the book, but was too lazy to get around to purchasing it. And I see it's on the table.
Not well worth.
And so I want to see how there's some maybe alternatives to, and I know she talks about non-traditional ways of looking at substance abuse in their personal history. So I thought I'd see what you incorporated from that, Connor.
Okay, thank you. Actually, that's how I came across the book and her story myself. I heard that probably the same NPR program.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Yes.
At Positive Alternatives, we work with adolescents. Most of them that have issues with substance use, it's just recreational. But my perception is that addiction issues are going to be becoming more prevalent.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay. So, as I indicated in my flyer as well, I was talking about cultivating a caring presence. Another acronym, which you saw in there, is caring presence is a compassionate, affirming, responsive, integrated, nurturing, and gentle presence. Put all those together, you can make a significant difference in the lives of the individuals that we work with. If, as we go along, feel free, if there is a question at any time through this, I'm looking to answer those questions as we go through this, okay? So just to give an example, if someone is in here going, I'm not quite sure what integrated means, feel free to ask, and I'll do my best to answer it. So cultivating a caring presence, I look at putting it on a continuum. So if you look at this as a continuum, you have what's wrong with you. And then you have what happened to you. And then I sense how this is affecting you, what can I do to help? Anybody willing to take a gander as to what kind of frame of mind each one of these is coming from? Perspective? Yes, sir.
What's wrong with you is a stereotypical, I'm okay, you're not okay type attitude. You're obviously here for a purpose, so you're the one that's in the wrong if you're in a counseling situation. What happened to you is still kind of a biasness about, something is kind of still wrong with you. In that sense, I think. The sense of how this is affecting you, what can I do to help, is more empathetic, understanding, to find out more information so that you can help that person without acting like he's got a problem or she's got a problem.
Sure. Okay. Excellent. That is a very a good way of classifying all three of those. Anybody else want to enter something?
Connor, I just see that, what's wrong with you, and it just reiterates that somebody's done something wrong. What's happened to you continues to perpetuate victimization, victimhood, lack of power, things like that. And then the third one, of course, is looking at more at, again, the current situation and moving forward. So.
Okay. All right. Goes along with what the gentleman said. Megan, you had something?
Well, and I think the I statement is I sense. That puts the main emphasis on me as either your counselor's compassionate friend, instead of saying, well, you should have, or it's letting them, giving them that open communication dialogue as well.
Okay. Excellent. All of those are right in with what you'll see next. Anybody else would like to share? Okay. So as I framed it, what's wrong with you is more of a judgment. Being very judging towards that person. They're the problem, right? What happened to you is eliciting some curiosity. That's more of a trauma-informed perspective. What happened to you? And then compassion. You get this sense of how it's affecting them through your empathy. And then what can I do to help you? The sense that you want to try to do what you can to alleviate that suffering. So cultivating a caring presence, a couple quotes. Read along with me. How much difference you make in the world is always relative to how deep you go within yourself. How much presence you access within yourself, how connected you are with the essence of who you are, the essence of life. It determines how much difference you really make in this life. That was from Eckhart Tolle. And then Thich Nhat Hanh said, mindfulness is the energy that helps us to be here, be there or here 100%. It's the energy of your pure presence. So what I like to do right now with that is kind of set a little bit of the tone, kind of did that a little bit, is the tone for being here now, being present in this moment right here. There's something that brought you here, you're coming from something, and you're eventually going somewhere. But to be here now and to be present is a wonderful quality to be able to bring into relationship with anybody, and especially with the population of individuals that we're talking about today, or individuals that that come to this profession for help. So what I'd like you to do, just totally on your own right now, is just to practice a little grounding technique. Okay, however you want to participate in this, you don't want to participate, totally fine as well. If you happen to close your eyes and you take a little snooze, that's okay too. All I'm looking to do is have you I invite you to tap into the 5 different senses. What do you notice right now with your eyes? So if you want to just maybe focus on that. What do you notice in the room? What do you notice? And then change your focus to, what do you smell? Is there anything that you notice through the sense of smell? And then, what do you notice? The sense of taste. What do you notice with the sense of feel, your body? How do you feel your body right now, sitting in the chair or standing behind the camera? And last but not least, what do you notice with your hearing? So this is a simple little grounding technique that you can utilize at any time to ground yourself and to help other individuals to be here in the present moment and help create that presence. So how many, by show of hands, are familiar with the new Surgeon General's report that just came out? Wow, okay. This is pretty groundbreaking. The Surgeon General's report on alcohol, drugs, and health just came out in November in 2016, just last month, provides evidence-based information on effective and sustainable strategies for addressing alcohol and drug problems. The report offers whole practical solutions and resources for communities which play a critical role in prevention, treatment, and recovery for those affected by substance use disorders and their consequences. Now, on your sheet, the references, I believe that I have that link. So if you have not been aware of this, I would encourage you to go and check that out. It is very, very comprehensive. There is a number of different documents that can be handouts and can be utilized. A wealth of information, and it's pretty groundbreaking. So with that, I'm going to call up a little, hopefully.
In America, drug and alcohol addiction is a major public health crisis. Addiction is one of the defining public health crises of our time. There is no single face of addiction. It impacts all of us and our families. Opioid overdose takes a life every 19 minutes. The time has come to improve prevention and to stop treating addiction as a moral failing. We need to start seeing it for what it is, a chronic disease of the brain that must be treated with urgency and compassion. More than 27 million people use illicit drugs or misuse prescription drugs. Over 66 million people binge drink at least once a month. Together, we can change the conversation and focus on preventing substance use disorders and connecting people who are suffering with the treatment, services, and recovery support they need. We will not hide from this issue because it's hard to talk about. Prevention works. Treatment is effective. Recovery is possible for everyone. For the first time, the United States Surgeon General has prepared a report on alcohol, drugs, and health. Our goal is to provide real hope for the millions of people and their families suffering from addiction. Together, we can prevent alcohol and drug-related addiction, and with treatment, we can give those suffering a new outlook on life. Facing Addiction in America, the Surgeon General's report on alcohol, drugs, and health. To read the report, please visit addiction.surgeongeneral.com.
Technology. Practicing my grounding technique. Focusing on my breath. What's up there? I wonder. I apologize. Mastered it. Okay. So that's just a little clip on the Surgeon General's report. So if you look at substance use and addiction, and put it on a continuum. Substance use, then you have substance misuse, and then you have substance use disorder, which addiction is the far end. As substance use is the use even one time of any substance. Now what's important to note is that use does not mean addiction. It's just exposure. Exposure does not mean addiction. Substance misuse, the use of any substance in a manner, situation, amount, or frequency that can cause harm to users or to those around them. For some substances or individuals, any use could constitute misuse. That is underage drinking, injection drug use. Again, misuse does not mean addiction. When I read that, am I talking too fast? Or it's fine, okay? And then substance use disorder, a medical illness caused by repeated, and I highlighted that, misuse of a substance or substances. Again, addiction is the most severe form or manifestation of a substance use disorder associated with compulsive or uncontrolled use of one or more substances. Addiction is a chronic brain disease that has the potential for both reoccurrence, relapse, and recovery. And these are taken from the Surgeon General's report. Addiction is defined as the compulsive pursuit of substances despite punishment or negative consequences. You'll see that theme throughout. Again, with addiction at the severe end, for substance use disorder to be diagnosed, it's mild, moderate, or severe. So severe is where addiction is. Substance use disorders range from mild to chronic. They typically develop gradually over time with repeated misuse. Again, repeated, leading to changes in the brain circuits governing incentive salience, which means the ability of the substance-associated cues to trigger substance seeking. It also rewards stress and executive functions like decision-making and self-control, again from the Surgeon General's report. The brain becomes rewired. Through this process of repeated misuse or repeated use, there's that learning potential that the brain becomes rewired and the priorities are reset and become ingrained and entrenched. That's why they are so focused on what they're focused on, and we on the outside looking in, we go, why can't they just focus over here? You understand the process that over time how the brain becomes rewired, the way I imagine it, think of the entrenched word. Instead of, you know, how when you create a habit, you do something repeatedly, you create a habit, right? And it's laying down a neural pathway. Now imagine that neural pathway, instead of just a little groove, right? Like in a garden, you know, a little groove, that it's actually 8 feet, 10 feet deep in the ground, and the sides are like this. So the person, it's so entrenched in the brain, that's the metaphor, the image I like to create. So repeated misuse, there is a learning that takes place. Hence, addiction can be seen as a learning disorder, which provides us with new insights into prevention and treatment. So addiction, I have a little activity. Let's see how well this goes. Let's see how mindful you all can be as I hand this out. Okay. So I have this acronym. Again, I like acronyms. We'll just take a minute or two trying to be mindful of the time. And again, there's no right or wrong here. You're not going to hand this in. It's not a quiz. It's not a test. But what you know of addiction, either clinically or just through personal experience or working with the population, what would you put down? What words would you put down that form the word addiction? So go ahead. You can brainstorm with each other. I'll just give you like a minute or two.
Distinguished.
Whatever you would like.
Disorder involving chronic.
That was good.
Distinguished disorder. Chronic.
While you're doing that, I'm going to go off camera for a moment. And I'm going to put something in front of you, okay? As you go through the rest of this presentation, you may have the impulse to either pick it up or you have a thought going, what's that for? Just be mindful of that, okay? Again, it's mindfulness practice.
Treatable instances of I didn't even spell chronic. Chronic. The letters are stuck in me.
We're seeing that. All right. So your time will be up as soon as I get back to the front of the table. Actually pulling from, I would have done this anyway, but I'm pulling from Dr. Dan Siegel, one of the
What did you say? Don't touch them.
DVDs or CDs I was listening to, which is actually a resource on there. He talked about, again, active learning, creating this, go back to learn, this need to learn, and kind of the curiosity of going, ooh, I know what that is, you know what that is, it's like, why is it out there? So there's creating an active learning process with regard to that. So, anybody willing to share something or other? If you come up with the whole addiction acronym, or just a word or two, anybody? I invite you to share. If not, I will move on.
A distinguished disorder involving chronic treatable instances of blank.
That's kind of hard, yeah. Excellent, excellent. Anyone else like to take a stab at the whole word or parts of it?
A deep desire involving certain triggers igniting one's nemesis.
Wow.
Oh, Ashley.
Anybody else? So through my research and my just the way my brain works and use of acronyms, I actually came up with a few. So the first one is avoidance, dopamine dysfunction, interrupted connections, trauma-induced depression of needs. Second one is affective dysregulation, disconnection, ineffective coping, thwarting, integration, and ongoing needs. The other is anhedonia, developmental disorder, internal conflict, thwarting intimacy, and ongoing needs. Or destructive, dysfunctionally functional intervention for coping with trauma that induces ongoing numbness. So again, this is what works for me. If I can turn a word into a message to help understand what this is all about, it just informs me and it informs that compassion for the individuals that I work with. Addiction insinuates, or it introduces or inserts itself gradually, insidiously, in a subtle or stealthy manner by hijacking the very brain functions that are critical to human survival. The reward pathways that have evolved to reinforce the behaviors, eating, drinking, having sex, that ensure we make it through another day and another generation. Neurotransmitters such as dopamine are released when we engage in these behaviors to produce feelings of pleasure and satisfaction that make us want to do them again and again and again. Drugs and alcohol, unfortunately, also work this neurological road. When we are exposed to addictive substances, our memory systems, reward circuits, decision-making skills, and conditioning all conspire to create rapidly and strongly reinforced patterns of craving. Again, imagine the trench. Addiction. This is something I just kind of set up there on the side, thinking, when it first came to me, think about it as a learning disorder. Use ADD, right? ADD, some people refer to as ADHD because it doesn't have the hyperactivity part. So that's one of the first things I came up with in my mind, again, as a learning device, as a memory device, to see addiction as a learning disorder. Yes, there is a disease component to it as well. Based on neuroscience, addiction is what kind of disorder? Anyone? Anyone?
Cognitive.
Cognitive elements. Absolutely. Honor your courage, put yourself out there. Answer is developmental. There are three pathways to addiction. For children, oversensitive, overstimulated sensory discomfort. They're looking for a sense of relief or comfort, looking for ways to turn down the volume. Children understimulated, they feel disconnected and numb, looking for stimulation. And the third one is this swing back and forth between the two. Underlying factors in learning. Underlying factors influencing whether and how rapidly a person will develop a substance use disorder, the substance itself, the genetic vulnerability of the user, and the amount, frequency, and duration of the use. We're going to expand on that a little bit. Here's a number of underlying factors. The risk factors or vulnerabilities. You got the genetics, you got epigenetics, predispositions, your nature and your nurture, which is the environment, subjective. So the environment is a subjective meaning making. One thing I want to note on that is right now I'm going through a year-long part of the Learning Collaborative to be a trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapist. And one of the things that we process during the trauma narrative process, which is the second phase of the model, is it's about the meaning making that that individual has made from their subjective experience. Every person can have the same exact experience, but then have a different meaning from it. Mm-hmm. So one person that could have a very traumatic and abusive, scary situation, goes on to just interfere in their life, where another person has the strengths or resilience or some supports around them that they're able to just adapt and move back to a baseline. So they have that resilience. Again, you got attachment issues, you got trauma, as I noted. There's a significant amount of what trauma means. Socioeconomic factors, the temperament, fixed mindset versus growth mindset. I'll discuss it a little bit again a little later. Labeling children, selfish, bossy, good or bad, that can lead to, again, a risk factor. Mental health, depression, anxiety, ADHD, autism, personality disorders, mood, self-loathing, self-denigration, social isolation or rejection. They have a longing to belong. Sensory issues, emotional behavioral dysregulation, impulsivity, bullying, which is basically a form of domination, power and control, can alter the stress system for life. We have a significant issue with regard to bullying. I hear about it, I see it, and to realize that it can alter the stress system for life is pretty scary. Deep sense of shame creates a submissive behavior, sense of unlovable, distress, especially severe chronic toxic distress. Difficulties with adjusting to early adulthood, wired atypically. I'll go into that a little bit later. And then ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, is the #1 national health crisis and possibly global crisis. I don't have a link specifically on the resource list, but if you go to the Healthy People Wood County link, they have a lot of links like to ACEs, where you can take a simple 10-question ACE quiz and find out what your ACE score is, and there's a direct correlation. For one experience, your likelihood is here, 2, it goes up at the same, 3 and 4, as the higher it goes, the more likely you're going to have mental health, physical, social issues as you age. Underlying factors in learning. 3 critical brain development stages. Pre-birth, 0 to 5 years of age. Yes, I was present for both of those, and now I'm going through number 3 with my son. Adolescence until young adulthood, which is ages 12 to 24. If you're not familiar with that, that has been revamped. I have Dr. Dan Siegel's book here too. It's a great book that I have referenced. Brainstorm, the Power of and Purpose of the Teenage Brain. Inside-Out Guide to the Emerging Adolescent Mind, ages 12 to 24. So which developmental stage is the most critical stage and the most likely stage that an individual will develop an addiction? Anyone? You can just shout it out, 1, 2, or 3.
2.
2.
Okay, so I heard a few 2s. I think I heard 1, 3. The answer is due to significant changes in the brain and body. The adolescent period of development presents the greatest risk for developing addictions. 90% of all addictions begin during adolescence. That doesn't mean 90% of people are going to become addicted. The statistic I'll show later is like 10 to 20% of all people that engage in substance use eventually form a severe substance use disorder, which was defined as addiction. And of those that occur, start in adolescence. The odds that people become alcohol dependent are nearly 50-50 if they start drinking regularly at 14 years of age. What's interesting is they are only 9% likely if they start at the age of 21. Because the brain is in flux, it is particularly vulnerable during this period. What is learned during the teen years will shape both the brain itself and the psychological coping skills people rely on for the rest of their lives. Underlying factors. Brain development is experience dependent. It takes repeated experience learning to change the brain in ways to develop an addiction or disease, the disease of addiction. Set and setting, these have factors. A set is a person's frame of mind, their mood, their expectations, the prevalent cultural ideas about a drug, the setting, the physical and social environment in which a substance is taken. Think about setting, imagine when we used to have smoking in bars, right? People would say, I only smoke when I drink. and there's been a reduction in smoking since the enactment of different policies. And a Surgeon General's report, they're not in bars, increase the costs, the taxes, and things like that. So that's part of helping with prevention. B.F. Skinner, operant conditioning, again, the positive and negative reinforcement and consequences. The delivery and timing of those positive and negative reinforcement consequences affect learning. And intermittent reinforcement is the most addictive learning pattern. Think video games and casinos. We crave order, control, predictability, comfort, and certainty. We crave love, social connection, and community. We long to belong and know that we matter and have value. Drugs supply this for a number of individuals who have not had it in their lives. And once they experience it, they just want to continue to have it. Drugs are powerful primarily when the rest of your life is broken. So again, continuums, I like continuums as well. When I went to my graduate school, that's one of the words that just jumped out on me, continuums. I love, love, love continuums. So you got prevention, and then you have treatment, and then you have recovery. There are prevention interventions, treatment interventions, and recovery interventions. We're looking today at a prevention and treatment interventions. Now, because of the time, and I know that Jesse has to go like in a minute or two, I'm going to bypass this video link. I can send it to you. We can send this PowerPoint out to people. It's basically a clip of Maya Shalovich, the author of Unbroken Brain, talking about this and how the drug policy originated as a form of racism. By viewing addiction as a developmental learning disorder, we can devise far more effective ways of preventing and treating it. So prevention, here's another acronym for me: proactive response to educate, validate, and encourage the naming and telling of information to obstruct notions. Prevention. Recently I saw a video where our very own Wisconsin Rapids Police Chief Kurt Hoyer, he's got it going on. He says, we're not going to arrest our way out of this. The U.S. Surgeon General echoed that. We know that we cannot incarcerate our way out of this situation. Instead, we need to apply an evidence-based public health approach that brings together all sectors of our society to end this crisis. And we know that addiction is not a moral failing. It is a chronic illness that must be treated with skill, urgency, and compassion. Part of prevention is reducing stigma, another acronym. Love acronyms. I came up with an acronym for stigma as a shame-based thinking, identifying groups as marginal and abnormal. Increased mental health services and education in schools is part of prevention. If you're not familiar, there's been a lot of articles in the paper recently about kids in crisis. Very recently, the state superintendent, Tony Evers, recently requested nearly $6 million to, quote, to expand mental health services for students, including hiring more social workers, establishing clinics in schools, and training school staff, unquote. So utilizing prevention programs designed to support and bolster protective factors and markedly reduce substance use and related threats to the health of the nation. There's a couple there. I'm going to talk about something different. One in the book talks about venture. These venture programs, they have different names at different places that they're utilized. It's developed by psychologist Patricia Conrad. Suggests that taking a developmental view of substance use disorders not only accurately describes these conditions, but is useful in preventing them. This program works with adolescents aged 13 to 16. It's designed to target those with temperaments that increase risk for both addiction and mental health and provides specific tools for coping with the unique problems that each temperament presents. It utilizes this substance use risk profile scale. It's a personality test that measures 4 traits, 4 vulnerabilities that each increase both addiction and mental health risk in different ways. And these are the 4 areas: impulsiveness, sensation-seeking, hopelessness, and anxiety sensitivity. Another one, prevention is a good behavior game. It's a classroom-wide teacher-implemented intervention that aims to improve classroom behavior and introduce young children to the role of being a student and a member of the classroom community. It looks at the aggressive and disruptive behaviors of children during the play, and it really works this process through first and second grade classrooms to reduce the risk of problems later on in life. The effectiveness of this game supports a role for universal prevention interventions in a redesigned system for child development and problem prevention and treatment. See where my focus is. My focus is on the prevention, and I know one of the difficulties of prevention is where's the money come from? Who's going to pay for it? hopefully with the state superintendent getting, at requesting the money, that can filter into the school systems to be able to do things like this. We got to get ahead of the game. Treatment. Therapeutic or timely responses encouraging action through the mobilization of evidence-based interventions to nudge, gently push individuals into traveling a different path. Say nudge because punishment doesn't work. Treatment, a caring presence. We talked about Q-tips. Pronounce Q-tips. Getting a little bit more of your triggering of your active learning. Moving from a criminal justice-based system to a public health approach. A public health approach seeks to understand the broad factors that influence substance misuse and substance use disorders and applies the knowledge to improve the health, safety, and well-being of the entire population. Again, from the U.S. Surgeon General's report. Harm reduction is a significant treatment approach. Just think of designated drivers. That is a harm reduction approach. It's about reducing the harm associated with substance use or misuse. And then some EBIs, which is evidence-based interventions, acceptance and commitment therapy, this CRAFT, cognitive behavioral therapy, of course, and motivational enhancement therapy. Prevention and treatment. So these are the highlights. We're coming close to the end. Wow, I'm getting close to the end. Right at time. Drug exposure alone doesn't cause addiction. Only 10 to 20% of drug users become addicted to substances like marijuana, alcohol, cocaine, and heroin. Addiction cannot occur until a drug has been taken repeatedly and the brain has learned that the substance can be relied on to cope with emotional challenges. Again, the set and setting matter. It helps with through controlling the situation through regulation and not prohibition. I'm not going to read that one. People can learn even while addicted. Part of the common practice is that they need to hit rock bottom. They need for them to learn. People that are addicted can still learn. That's part of that harm reduction, meeting them where they're at, treating them with respect and compassion. Punishment cannot solve a problem defined by its resistance to punishment. Addiction does not respond well to punishment. I think there's a lot of kids too, the same way, conduct disorder, oppositional defiant disorder. If they have a trauma history, complex trauma history, they don't respond well to to punishment. Because it's basically, that's why they are, in a lot of ways, why they are the way they are. Thank you. All people learn better when treated with respect, a high regard. I put that in there because I think respect can be thrown around and people can use it in ways that it's not really intended. There's a high regard for an individual. If you think of, I think, Martin Buber's theory of I, thou, I, it relationship. An I, thou relationship is there is a mutual respect, a reciprocity, of high regard for each other. I, it relationship is I deserve the respect, only I. It comes this way. You are an it, you're an object. You are a means to an end for me. That's not respect. Respect is I, thou. Treatment must be reformed to be respectful. Meet people, again, where they are at. Teach. We are role models rather than preach. Prevention. Primary prevention should focus on coping, not drugs. Start early in life. Help kids understand their temperaments and emotions and how to maximize self-control and self-regulation. That's what that program was before, that uses that subscale that gets the 4 areas, the 4 traits that increase the risk of addiction. Celebrating diversity, including neurodiversity, is critical for harm reduction again. And we'll just go on to the next. Again, focusing on their strengths and abilities. People's brains are wired differently. So using Q-tips. Here's your Q-tip in front of you. I came up with another acronym. It was interesting. I wrote something out and then I say, hey, there's an acronym. Compassion and understandings and trauma-informed perspectives. So conclusion. By itself, nothing is addictive. Drugs can only be addictive in the context of setting, dosing pattern, and numerous other personal, biological, and cultural variables. Addiction isn't just taking drugs. It is a pattern of learned behavior. It only develops when vulnerable people interact with potentially addictive experiences at the wrong time, in the wrong places, and in the wrong pattern for them. It is a learning disorder because this combination of factors intersects to produce harmful and destructive behavior that is difficult to stop. My concluding statement is, you are the tool that can make a difference. Your caring presence and use of Q-tips, compassionate understandings, and trauma-informed perspectives can alter the course of a person's life. Thank you.